Coming up on today's show.
Clutter takes so many different forms, so I've kind of encompassed all of those in Goodbye Clutter.
Yes, and now we know why you have over 1 million people visit your site a year, because there's a lot of clutter that people are dealing with.
The longer they're in a home or in an office, the more stuff that they end up accumulating. And, it's stuff that we purchased with, probably good money.
Goodbye Clutter, today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. Today, we're going to talk about clutter and saying bye-bye, goodbye to that. And joining us, I've been waiting a long time to get Maria Gracia on from Get Organized Now. How are you doing, Maria?
Oh, I am doing fabulous. How are you?
Awesome. You have this huge website that has all kinds of resources on it. You have, over 1 million people a year that come to your site?
Yep, we do. And it's so fabulous. Everybody that I know or that I've come across has different degrees of organizing help that they need, whether they need a little or a lot. So it encompasses a lot of people worldwide.
Well, now we're not going to talk a lot about the blog today or this website, whatever you call it, but just give us a glimpse, because you used to be a professional organizer and kind of morphed into this. How did that transition happen?
Yes, well, essentially, I used to kind of go into people's homes and offices, and I would help them personally get organized. But throughout the years, the internet started to become popular, and I felt that if I was just helping people individually, then I couldn't help enough people. And when it comes to the website, obviously, that goes out to the world. So the website was started, and it took off right away. People really love anything that has to do with clutter control, time management, storage, goals, all that. And right now I have a newsletter that goes out to 180,000 subscribers. So a lot of popularity. Our social media channels are bursting right now. It's just amazing. So
you are everywhere, aren't you?
we are.
Yes. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about the website at the end of the program and let people know how to get there. But we're going to talk about clutter today, and more important, getting rid of it. So you've got a new resource now called Goodbye Clutter, and let's talk about some of the areas of clutter. How would you define clutter in the first place?
Yeah, clutter is anything that gets in the way of you reaching your goals or getting your tasks done, or it's anything that kind of robs you of your happiness, essentially. I think a lot of people think that clutter only comes in the form of maybe a pile of stuff that's sitting on the dining room table or a pile of clothes that might be sitting at the bottom of a closet. But there's actually so much more to clutter than that. In my Goodbye Clutter resource, I described this 4 different types of clutter. The first type of clutter is physical clutter. Mm-hmm. So that may be something that you can feel and touch. A room full of toys, a room full of stuff from your attic, boxes of things that you inherited, etc. There's also paper clutter. Paper clutter are your bills that you receive in the mail, your mail itself, schedules that come home from school with your kids, your big pile of papers to be filed, magazines, and the like. And then you have your digital clutter, which the paperless society has now turned into more digital clutter than ever. We have email, tons of email, bookmarks that need to be rearranged or weeded out, any kind of voicemail clutter, things that we DVR that we never watch. And then finally, there is emotional clutter, which is anything that's kind of holding you back from your happiness, negativity, fear, worry, and the like. Clutter takes so many different forms, so I've kind of encompassed all of those in Goodbye Clutter.
Yes, and now we know why you have over 1 million people visit your site a year, because there's a lot of clutter that people are dealing with. Well, let's kind of take them one at a time. Let's talk about physical clutter, and what are some good tips on how to deal with it?
Absolutely. Let me start with what the problem is with physical clutter. I think that people, the longer they're in a home or in an office, the more stuff that they end up accumulating. And, it's stuff that we purchased with, probably good money.
Mhm.
It's gifts that we've received from people. Um, we get this stuff, we're not really ready to kind of move on with it, even if we're not using it. And the problem gets bigger and bigger and bigger until we have a house full of stuff and we don't have any idea where to start. So when we get to that point, we kind of get paralyzed.
Mm.
It's kind of like, well, I don't have no idea where to start. I don't have the time to take care of this. So you kind of walk away from it.
Mhm.
And then again, the problem gets worse. So what I usually like to tell people when they have any kind of clutter they're trying to get rid of is it probably didn't get there in a day, so it doesn't have to leave in a day. But if you ignore it completely, it's never going to go away and it's probably just going to grow. So handling it in little bits and pieces is my biggest recommendation to people. You have 5 items that you're going through. Just take one of those items, just pick one of the 5 and say, okay, I'm really not using this. Let me donate it, or let me give it to a relative who might be able to use it. Or instead of doing by number of items, you can do it by like a time in your day. So you might say, okay, I'm going to take 5 minutes tomorrow. I'm going to put a couple of songs on the radio and see what I'm not using anymore that I can put in the donation box.
Mhm.
When you give yourself little tiny mini goals instead of these big colossal goals, you can actually see that clutter move out of your house. Um,
Well,
and the other thing,
how about those physical items though that are like have a lot of memories associated with them? Maybe
yeah,
it was a gift from 10 years ago or something your mother or father gave you, or they've got that value of, oh, I can't just, how do you deal with that?
absolutely. Well, okay, so I think all of us have a huge right to keep a lot of memories in our homes. I mean, I'm a really sentimental person myself. I probably have every love note my husband ever gave me. I never would get rid of that. I'm a scrapbooker, so I have tons of photographs and scrapbooks and all that. I think the problem only comes in when you're having a hard time discerning what is really near and dear to your heart and what really isn't that important. Um, like for example, like my daughter, you have a 12-year-old and she's constantly bringing artwork home from school
Mhm.
or essays that she's written and all that kind of stuff. So, by the end of the year, I keep all her stuff from a school year just in a couple of baskets. By the end of the year, that accumulates. And I'm not going to keep everything because everything is not quite as important as other things. So I might keep the 2 essays out of the 20 that she wrote that she really finds importance in, or that I feel are really, really good. Or we may keep a note from a teacher that she was particularly fond of, and maybe not keep every little piece. It's kind of discerning between the two.
Now, do you like rate something, or say, well, this has, you have 2 items, this one versus this one, I can only keep one, or do you just kind of just take it on a case by case basis?
Very often we'll kind of do the keep 20%
Mm-hmm.
type of rule. If you have 10, let's keep 2. However, if you have 10 things and there's 3 or 4 things that are really, really important to you, well, certainly we're not going to throw our memories out. The one thing that you can do, in addition to that, is maybe you've downsized. Maybe you've gone from a really large house to a really small house, and there's no way you can keep most of what you have. Then you can actually take a photograph of something that you really like and keep it digitally instead of keeping the physical item. Um, One thing that I've seen a lot of parents do is they'll have a wall in their house or a corkboard, and they'll put all of the artwork their child has made throughout the year on it. And
Mm-hmm.
then they'll put their child right in front of the corkboard and take a photograph of the child
Mm.
standing in front of his or her artwork. And now you have the memory. The memory is not going away. You have it digitally stored.
Right.
And then the actual physical pieces, if you can only keep one or whatnot, you can pass the other ones on to relatives, or you can recycle. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay, just because you're recycling your child's artwork doesn't mean you're necessarily getting rid of the memory.
Right.
As long as you saved it somehow.
Right, right. Well, let's transition into digital, because you kind of made, you took it from physical to digital. Well, now what happens when we have too much digital clutter? Because we have
Yeah.
tons of photos. I mean, I think with the if you're into scrapbooking, like our family is as well, you get thousands of photos, thousands, and But if you want to create a scrapbook, you have to choose 3 or 4. How do you deal with not only the digital pictures, but everything digital, and keeping the clutter away from that?
Absolutely. Well, let's start with the photographs. Okay, so as a scrapbooker, I take tons and tons of photos. Like you said, I only scrapbook, a few 4 to 6 photos on a page. I really like our photos. We only keep the really good photos. So I will say that we immediately delete any photos that are less than great. It's just not worth keeping less than great photos. In the end, you're going to want to see some of the best photos of your vacation and whatnot. But as long as they're organized into folders and you can find them, I see no reason to get rid of that. We use an online service. It stores tons and tons of photos. In fact, I have a lifetime of photos stored on a service online. And I don't keep all those photos on my hard drive because they're backed up that way for me. So there are definitely ways you can keep your photos. Right. But let's talk about like email. Not every email is
Let's
important.
not talk about that. No.
Right.
Actually, yeah.
I think a lot of people, I just was talking to someone the other day and she had 2,500 emails sitting in her inbox, and she was really overwhelmed and didn't know what to do. And it was more of an instruction of, well, you need to kind of handle it a little bit a day. So maybe you might get rid of the 10, maybe like the 50 emails right away, delete, that you can immediately see are unimportant. Spam can be deleted immediately. Anything that you don't have to take an action on can either be deleted or moved into a folder for that subject to be kept later on. I think what happens is people just get overwhelmed, and it's understandable. You have 2,500 emails sitting in your inbox. You're getting new email every day, and that can seem like a really daunting thing. In fact, one time I had somebody contact me, and she had 5,000 emails sitting in her inbox, and she didn't know what to do. And this is going to probably sound drastic, but I told her to just change email services at that point.
Right.
And it was like, if somebody is really interested in getting back to you, they will get back to ground zero, and then try to keep up with it on a daily basis. Like, I won't go to bed if I have email sitting in my inbox. It just doesn't sit well with me, because I know tomorrow there's going to be more and more and more coming.
Right. I try to do that at work too. I try to keep the inbox empty, and then you have all these folders. And what I found is, like, I have a to read folder. Yes. The thing is so huge, but then I also don't, get distracted as much to start reading a bunch of things. Now you have to kind of schedule some time to read, but yes. I know that eliminating the email account is actually a good idea, because you figure if something is really that important, people will either call you or, they'll re-email you, say, hey, didn't you get my email? Yeah. So that's actually a great tip. Well, listen, we're halfway through this. We've talked about physical and digital. When we come back from the break, I want to talk a little bit more about emotional clutter and also some more about paper clutter. So we're with Maria Gracia from Get Organized Now, and we'll be right back. When you've got it together, everyone can tell. Your confidence is obvious. Introducing Viewables.com from Smead. Use the Viewables labeling system to transform your drawer of hanging files into a tidy, organized filing system. Using the premium hanging folder tabs, see the label from the front, top, and back. It's easy. Access Viewables.com from any computer, tablet, or internet-enabled smartphone. Let's make some labels. It's free, and there's nothing to download or install. Choose the label type and format your label just the way you want. You can even add index characters or icons for distinctive filing. Set up a free Viewables cloud account, and your secure login lets you save your projects for convenient access from any computer. And with Viewables multi-purpose labels, you can use one label for any type of file, including hanging folders, top tab folders, super tab folders, or oversize items like notebooks and file boxes. Upload a list of file headings and print your complete set of labels in moments. There's even a library of templates for commonly used label sets. It's never been easier to set up neat-looking files that have easy-to-read headings and efficient color codes. Obviously organized. Viewables.com. From Smead, keeping you organized. We're back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about goodbye clutter. Saying goodbye to it. And with us is Maria Gracia from GetOrganizedNow.com. It's a website that has all kinds of resources on it. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Maria, you have this resource called Goodbye Clutter. And we kind of talked before the break about the physical clutter, and we talked about digital, but there was a couple other areas. We've got emotional and paper clutter. So what about emotional clutter? I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about that. So how would you kind of define that, and how do we deal with it?
Yeah, all of us are really busy in our day, and I think we all have our challenges, some bigger, some smaller. And we end up with things in our lives like fear of doing something that maybe we want to do. We're not quite sure if we should do it, or we're concerned about doing it, how it might affect us. We're worried, about our kids. We may be worried about parents who are ill, etc. Any kind of emotion that's holding you back from getting you to where you want to be, or is impacting your productivity, is clutter. Just like paper clutter would be an obstacle in your life. You really have to be careful with the emotional clutter, and there are definitely ways to kind of maybe not get rid of it, but manage the emotional clutter in your life, so perhaps you don't have as much of it.
So how would you classify that? Do you try to sit down and think for a while and say, what are all the things that would fall under this? Or how do you identify, first of all, what that stuff is?
Yes, absolutely. In my Goodbye Clutter book, I actually give 10 areas of emotional clutter that you can kind of think about. But I do think that a lot of people have things that they do think about all the time. If your mom is ill or something, and so that's going to be on your mind all the time. So that's your personal emotions that you're dealing with that day. Or if you have kids in college and you're worried that they are not up to par in their grades, that's something that you are worrying about. So I do think people have an idea of what their emotional clutter is. What I usually tell people is, if there's something on your mind, if you're worried about something, if you're fearful about something, if you're embarrassed about something, kind of journal what you're feeling, because sometimes just writing it down and getting it on paper kind of solidifies exactly what you're going through, and that kind of helps you get through that situation. Like if you have perhaps a friend who is, I don't know, maybe not treating you right, getting that down on paper and out of your head kind of is like a way to unleash that from yourself. And now that you know exactly what it is, we can work on some systems to maybe help you manage that better. Maybe you don't see that friend as often. Maybe you have a heart-to-heart with your friend. Maybe you seek out another circle of friends. So there's definitely ways to not have to deal with things that are really negative in your life, or better manage things that are negative so that you're not negative toward those things.
I would think also that if you're journaling and writing this down, you're in the mode, you might think, well, what would be a couple of ways to deal with this situation too? And you could journal that down. And just by, they say you write something down, you almost commit yourself to it. So it sounds like that would be part of the process too.
Absolutely. And, when it's written down, then you might say, this is really bothering me. These are the 3 things that are bothering me. Maybe I can talk to my husband or my wife about this. Maybe I can, get some help, or talk to a friend over coffee and see what possible solutions she can come up with. Because you don't want, when you have any kind of emotional clutter in your life, it affects everything. It affects your productivity. It affects whether you're late for something. It affects whether you're procrastinating on a project, when something's weighing heavy on your mind, it just puts an obstacle in front of you immediately.
Right, right. Okay, well, we've gotten the emotional, and we're not going to solve all our emotional problems in one podcast, but let's get into the paper, because that's a real common one. We hear and talk about all that a lot on this program. Paper, how do you, I mean, yeah, we hear this thing that, oh, well, digital's here and all the paper's gone. Not at my house, at least. So how do you get control of paper clutter?
Yes, and paper clutter, I think, is probably the most challenging for people. Most people know that you put the cans corn with the cans corn, but when it comes to paper clutter, it's kind of a little more challenging. So with the paper clutter, there's a couple of things. Number one, I think handling your paper on a daily basis will prevent it from being a colossal paper monster in the end. Going through your mail while you're standing right next to, let's say, the recycling container, opening it up, throwing out the outer envelope, throwing out any ads that you're not going to find useful, and putting, your bills in where they're supposed to go. When your kids come home with a schedule from school, knowing to recycle the old schedule right away instead of just tossing the new schedule on top of the old one. Newspapers. If you can't get it to a newspaper in 1 or 2 days, it's pretty much old news. Right. That can be recycled pretty easily. Magazines, once you get the new magazine, if you haven't yet gotten to the old magazine, do you really want to keep that subscription? So there's definitely a lot of different paper clutter tips to keep the clutter at bay, but most importantly, it's making sure that you're kind of handling paper every single day for 10 or 15 minutes, whether that means going through your mail or weeding out a file folder or going through your kids' school papers when they come home and getting those papers into the right place. I always say with paper that you're either going to do whatever action is necessary on the paper and then either recycle that paper or file it away. Do it, delegate it. If it belongs to somebody else, get rid of the paper. Dump it, which is a huge one, right? So do it, delegate it, dump it. And the other one is delay it, which basically means that you would file that paper away for future reference, either in an action file or your filing cabinet or a project binder or whatnot. It's kind of keeping that paper moving along and not stagnating on a desk or an end table or the kitchen table where a lot of paper in the average household ends up.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people want to say, I'll get to this eventually, so they put it off to the side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, all right, well, we're about out of time here. Before we go, let's talk a little bit more about how people can reach you, which I'm assuming is through the website, and what kinds of things can they find when they're on the website?
Yeah, on the website, well, we have a treasure chest of goodies. They're all completely free that you can sign up for right on the homepage, which is nice. I have a monthly checklist. So every single month, let's say we're in the month of January here, January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, there's a little organizing project to do every day. So you don't have to think about what you want to do. We have mini challenges that people are taking. We have reader tips. We have Ask Maria, which is basically our organizing clinic. You can ask me questions. Just tons of stuff. I probably can't even name everything, but everything on the website, is essentially free for the taking. So awesome. I highly recommend just having a peek. And there's also access to all our social media channels there as well.
All right. Give the website address out.
The website address is getorganizednow.com.
All right. Well, Maria, thank you so much. We covered a lot of ground here in this podcast, and I'm sure we're going to have you back again to talk about other subjects, because it sounds like you do have the treasure chest there of knowledge and information. So thanks a lot, and we'll catch you on the next time.
Thank you. Super fun. Thanks.
All right, folks. Well, there you have it. You can say goodbye to clutter, and we're going to say goodbye to you, and see you next time on Keeping You Organized. Coming up next time on Keeping You Organized.
For most people, the year-end goal is not to get their tax information to the accountant on April 14th.
Right.
That's going to be a little late.
Right.
Or even to fill it out yourself if you have taxes that are simple enough.